started. So today's agenda is to introduce you to the speakers of the panel that we have today, and then followed by an introduction to FITWEL as a standard, because a lot of you are aware of LEAD, well, but FITWEL is relatively new. So it's just giving you a sneak peek of what exactly it's about, followed by actual case studies done in different forms. But here we have Noah from Gensler, who will be presenting it from a case study point of view, followed by Jyotsna presenting on some of the design solutions, or um, more like a broad introduction to a lot of these concepts uh, that's part of FitWell. And we'll also have a Q&A at the end. But when we are presenting, you can also post your questions in the chat box so that we can answer them towards the end of the presentation. So I would like the presenters to introduce themselves. I'm Madhubala, and I work as a lead designer at Gensler Oakland. I'm a recent FitWell ambassador, and I'm very much passionate about sustainability and the wellness aspect of design. And I'm very much excited to learn from the other presenters today. Noah, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, I'm Nova. I'm from Gensler as well. I'm based out of the San Francisco office. I'm currently the Northwest lead for FitWell. And my regular day-to-day job is a strategy manager, but I also focus on built certifications such as LEED, FitWell, and WELL.
Thank you, Nova. So the next we have is on board is Jyotsna. I'm sure a lot of you are aware of her if you're from AIA Silicon Valley, but yeah, can you introduce yourself, Jyotsna?
Sure. Thanks, Madhu. Hi, everyone. I'm Jyotsna. I'm a sustainability and resilience specialist from Jacobs. I work out of their San Jose office. As part of my day job, I focus on building certifications. That includes FitWell, LEED, and other aspects of sustainability like building performance analysis.
Yes, thank you. So let's just move on to the interaction of FitWell. So we'll have an overview of the FITWEL certification and its historical impact on health and the development behind FITWEL. We'll also learn why is it very impactful and how to advance through the certification process. I'm sure a lot of you are aware of the Center for Active Design. So they are the operator of FitWell and is also responsible for the third-party certification. It's an independent nonprofit organization. They're working globally to advance its mission, which is to transform the design and development practice to support health and optimal quality of life. So the slide that we have here talks about a lot of design and policies and how it has helped eradicating infectious diseases. So for example, back in the late 19th and 20th century, most of the deaths in the United States were happening because of infectious disease. But in order to tackle that, we had a lot of infrastructure and policy changes. Like we created a lot of reservoirs for fresh water, subway system for reducing overcrowding and things like that. That is a way to tackle infectious diseases, and it has been very fruitful. You can see those changes drastically, actually helping the people in combating the infectious diseases. But at the same time, we have a lot of non-infectious diseases like chronic diseases, diabetes, heart disease, or stroke, or asthma, that is actually summing up to 7 out of 10 deaths each year in the United States, and it's a major risk factor. So we have reached a point where we'll have to actually work on design and policies to combat chronic diseases from a design point of view. So so that is where we have all of these FitWell or WELL and other certifications coming into picture to make sure that we do that consciously. And as you can see, 78% of millennials see workplace quality as a very important factor when choosing an employer. So it might not be that great of a factor before, but currently, where millennials are comprising the major workforce, it's a big factor. And they will also, it's also seen that from the statistics, 69% of them will trade other benefits for better workplace. In workplaces, if you see, and these are some of the major concerns that we see today. One is productivity costs, absenteeism, and talent attraction. And all of this is, at the end of the day, tied to the well-being or the kind of spaces that you're going to work at. Again, there are more statistics on how millennials and boomers prefer walkable communities, and very few, like fewer than 2% of them, of active real estate listings are in highly walkable areas. So these are some of the statistics that we have to support why health and well-being should be a very important factor when you design spaces. And not just that, some of the financial drivers detail that you see in the chart here. So this graph actually shows the results of a study which found that the stock values for a portfolio of companies that score high on health and well-being appreciated by 235% compared to the index appreciation of 159% over a 6-year simulation period. So it is based on the following initiatives, which measures practices that support health and well-being within the companies. So basically, it says your financial performance is tied to wellness, and when you have wellness as your core vision factor, it's always reflected in your financial performance. And again, even when it comes to investment trends, people are very responsible these days, and 77% of millennials are interested in owning impact investing vehicles. It's just an example of how people are starting to look at things in a very different way, and why we should be also doing it that way. So these are some of the background information for Fitwel, but about Fitwel itself, it's positioned to leverage the rising demand for whatever practical and implementable approaches to improve health within the built environment. So its vision is to have a healthier future where every building is enhanced to support well-being. It's a certification system that takes an integrated approach to how design and operations of a building or project site can improve health, happiness, and productivity. It's launched in 2017. So, but since then, it has been seeing substantial market demand after just a year. And all of the design and operation strategies within Fitwel, one of the good things is it's all evidence-based and very practical solutions that impact occupants and residents' daily routines to promote their physical, mental, and social well-being. And it's managed by CDC and GSA, General Services Administration. CFAD became the sole operator and third-party certifier of Fitwel in 2016, and it's a third-party certification done by these two entities. So as this slide says, we have about 5,000 plus evidence-based research studies supporting Fitwel because they have been working on the system for quite a while. And we have about 70 plus operational and design strategies having the strongest health evidence base and potential to make the highest impact for health. And when you look at the health impact categories that Fitwel has, it's a little different from Well, but we can still start to see a lot of overlap. So it focuses on what impacts that we have surrounding community health and how can we reduce morbidity and absenteeism and social equity for vulnerable population, increasing physical activity, promoting occupant safety, enhancing access to healthy foods, instills of feelings of well-being. So it's entirely focused on health itself. We don't see a lot of these categories like in Well, when it comes to air, water, specifically that way, but it's all we can start to see a lot of synergy when we go in detail. And it also has a portfolio-based approach similar to Well. So these are the different categories under which you can have your project certified for Fitwel. Existing or new construction, rehab or renovation, owned or leased spaces, campuses, affordable, market rate residential. So these are some of the categories, but you can learn more about this if you go on their website. And also, it's not just for new projects. You can have your design project certificate under design certification. And if you have an existing project and if you would still like it to be FITWEL certified, you can always do that using the build certification, since there is also a lot of policy level changes that you can do to get the ratings that you're hoping to get. And these are some of the partners that FITWEL has. And as a certification process, it's pretty straightforward. I'm sure if anybody has already done projects with LEED or WELL, it has a very similar approach. So you'll have to register your project to the FITWEL portal and basically assess in comparison to the FITWEL scorecard they have, responding to their strategies, and you'll have to benchmark a project. You can do that multiple times so that you can keep track of the process, the progress of the project, and you can submit it with the necessary documentation and then review it and get it certified. And it's generally valid for 3 years, and after that you can also go for a recertification. And yeah, so for FITWEL, the star rating is based on the number of stars. So if you can manage to ensure up to 90 to 104 points based on their scorecards, you get a 1 star, and 2 star and 3 star, depending on the scores that you can achieve, when comparing it to the scorecard that they have. It's a very digital platform, and it's a data-driven certification tool. You can use this to keep track of your projects and see progress, and it can be used throughout your design process, or if you're doing it for build projects, it can be also tracked after build projects with some maintenance categories as well. These are some of the other features of the digital scorecard. Yeah, so this is just an introduction for the FITWEL certification by itself, but so next we'll have Nova talking about some of the actual projects that she worked on from Gensler, and what are the challenges that she had actually implementing it. So I will let Nova take over the slides next.
Sure. Thank you, Madhu. Yes, I wanted to give kind of a higher level strategy that we had to take based on different approaches. And these are also not just by me, but also maybe by another FITWEL manager for our projects. I did a couple of these projects that I'm going to share with you today. And it's just basically going over a few case studies in the Pacific Northwest region. And just to kind of follow up, if you go on the next slide, that, following kind of the data that's showing that for companies, wellness is in focus. And, besides the buildings, that people are our most important asset. And these, FITWEL as built certification is way to address some of these, this priority. And health and wellness have quietly become a consequential issue in the business community. So as the evidence shows, happier people are more likely to be productive, collaborative, and more likely to innovate in ways that benefit the bottom line. The next slide shows just basically how important it is to, at the beginning, at the onset, as quickly as possible, that the project parameters should be determined, because it does impact, whether you do design certification or built certification. It identifies, what type of scorecard you'll be using, exactly what's in that project boundaries, and really trying to gain an understanding of the occupants, because strategies, and if you ever look at the scorecard or some of the strategies, it'll say regular occupants, building occupants, on-site building staff, and those are things that need to be clarified on the project. And some of it is vague, but we're able to work directly with the Center for Active Design that administers FITWEL on a regular basis to just kind of go through any clarifications. And if there's any question as to which scorecard you should use, or, perhaps it's like a dual, like this has happened previously where there's like 2 towers that you're trying to certify. Is it 1 project, 2 projects? So those are the type of things that could be clarified with the Center for Active Design. The next slide is very telling, and this is something I like to share with clients right away, because different from FITWEL and WELL, there's about 50% of the credits are either site oriented with the site, and then either programs, policies, operations, or employee engagement. So there's a ton of different strategies or policies that they need to provide, in addition to some of the architecture interiors. And there's a lot, there's a bit of signage, some landscape, and there's a little bit of the MEP and lighting. So not as robust as WELL is in terms of that, the MEP. But this is something that shows them at the onset, like, okay, we're going to have to walk you through the process. There's a lot of policies that we're going to have to walk you through. And this is not necessarily like the design project team or the teams that are on the design project. It's going to be, we will need to maybe work with their HR people or operations or facilities as part of the process. And it also includes like maybe food consultants or other consultants that may be part of this group. So if we go to the next slide, yes, this is for 200 Park. So this is in your backyard or front yard. So this is 200 Park in San Jose, California. It's a multi-tenant based building, scorecard, and it's a 19-story commercial office building. It's about 1.13 million square feet. About 840 of that is occupiable space, with a balance of parking, vertical circulation, mechanical equipment. The building has outdoor terraces on levels 5 through 19, and the ground floor is activated by tenant spaces. There's also vehicular parking subterranean and above grade. And the new landscaping that's will be provided connects to the City of San Jose's Park Paseo, and a stormwater treatment is located on the south side of the project. And just to note, the construction will be complete in Q3 2023, and the applicant in this case was a developer, J-Paul Company. You can go to the next slide. So there were some challenges with this project. J-Paul Company was really good with the overall process that we went through. However, there were some challenges to overcome to achieve the 2-star rating that they did get on the project. So the Center for Active Design recommends that the multi-tenant based building, when you're doing a core and shell project, is the closest thing. It's not quite equivalent, but it's most closely aligned between core and shell projects and multi-tenant based building standards. But across, as you can see, some of the issues that we have here is what if they get a single tenant versus a multi-tenant? Who are the occupants? Are they the tenants? Are they the building management team? Operational policies. Well, what happens if it is a single tenant? Then J-Paul would no longer be over that. And there is also some interiors programming that is part of multi-tenant based buildings. So some of the challenges we had to deal with, but how we're able to overcome that. So was to note that, so one other questions was, about the multi-tenant versus single tenant. And it was determined after some conversations with the client, and then also confirming that with the Center for Active Design, that the building should proceed with a multi-tenant based building, which is what we were registered that building as. And should the program, so the program has to get recertified, or the building would have to get recertified every 3 years. So at the current state and time, it is registered as a multi-tenant based building. And in 3 years, should it maintain itself as a multi-tenant based building, then J-Paul could pursue the built certification in 3 years. In the event that a single tenant comes in, then the single tenant, whether it be whatever company that might be, would go in and they have a choice to pursue it and recertify the building. And it would likely be design certification because it would have different standards as a single tenant building. But what was key for the developer in order to make this happen is that they were to make the kind of the statements and policies and the drawings, because they didn't know what the future is going to be, and they still don't know whether it's still going to be multi-tenant or single tenant, but was the ability that these statements, policies, and such could be draft and submitted as drafts, and the drawings could be submitted as drafts. So that was really key. And just to note that I have relayed this information, and I think that they've probably heard it from other projects, is that there's considerations in the next FITWEL version 3 that's coming out in 2023 that will address this. So for achievements and the takeaways, J. Paul successfully achieved the 2-star rating earlier this year due to the part that we were able to stay really highly engaged with the client through the entire time. And they had pushed the continued collaboration with the team. We also took advantage of the new terraces, landscaping, location, and entrance to really optimize some of these FITWEL strategies. And just a few notes that a FITWEL for high level impacts that 200 Park was able to achieve was there's about an 86% increase of physical activity strategies within this project, and 83% of increase in community impact based on the strategies they were able to achieve. Go on to the next project. So this is for, many of you are probably familiar, have flown out of SFO. So this is specifically for the Harvey Milk Terminal 1. It is a FITWEL standard retail scorecard. They don't have an aviation. So this is something we had to clarify with Center for Active Design, that the retail would be the most appropriate and most aligned with the airport. It did achieve a 2-stars design certification, and the status is complete. So as far as the project goes, SFO's vision for this terminal was to celebrate kind of the joy, travel, highlight everything uniquely Bay Area, and also to emphasize discovery, delight, and passenger wellness was a big thing. SFO also wanted to make the travel experience less stressful and more engaging with the project team, and designed a modern ticketing lobby and a checkpoint to after security screenings, high ceilings in the terminals diffuse noise and increase natural light, providing a sense of openness that helps passengers relax, which locally sourced dining options and artwork from Bay Area artists exhibit about at Harvey Milk. The terminal puts San Francisco's story front and center. Just to note that the applicant is the SFO Airport City and County of San Francisco. And then on to challenges. So, this is kind of a different type of kind of standard that as an airport was something that they had to look at with, kind of changing from, business as usual. Who exactly were the occupants that some of these strategies would align with? Does that mean we have to modify these policies we've had in place? How does this affect the tenants? And then just even the approval for process for signage, and it being that it's a governmental entity, there's always, more of a process with that, as well as it was a very large project team with like 4 different architects. There was several consultants and specialty consultants. So it was really gathering all those different parties together to make this work. But they were able to introduce some kind of new types of elements even through this process, with local vendors, ergonomics, biophilic elements, and even bike storage at the airport. And next slide. And some of like the key achievements and takeaways. So first of all, yes, this was the first certified FITWEL airport ever. And it also achieved the best in building health. In 2021, it was received that sort of award from the Center for Active Design, which focuses on sustainable and health-centered. This terminal embodies a future of travel. And it also, just in terms of some of the guidelines that they were able to implement, they were able to increase indoor access to nature, encourage walking, and include sustainability message signage. And also they developed or enhanced policies with like the indoor air quality standards and testing and education, water quality standard, occupant survey, commuter survey, and green cleaning policy. In addition, they also try to make passengers feel at home, and T1 features the Kids Spot, which is an interactive play area to keep young travelers entertained before boarding, as well as the first all-gender restrooms at SFO. And so the next project is T-Mobile headquarters in Bellevue, Washington. This project is still in process. In terms of FITWEL, the project is completed. So our Seattle office, and actually it was one of my projects with T-Mobile. It's a multi-tenant, it's a multi-building campus. There's about 5 buildings that spans about 1.45 million square feet in Bellevue, Washington. The goal was to celebrate, the company's unique culture and brand, focusing on recruitment and wellness. The team leveraged both qualitative and quantitative data to enable to design and really take a holistic look at this campus. The bold renovation extends across the headquarters, touching nearly 1 million square feet of office space, and all exterior building connections in public areas. This includes the main entry pavilion, reception area, employee workspaces, a 2-floor amenity space, and new sky bridges for an all-connected and inclusive campus. So here, T-Mobile's applicant, each building is registered as a single tenant project on campus, and how they'll take the campus rating is they'll average out once the FITWEL process is complete and all buildings are certified, they'll take the average score of all the buildings. So some of the challenges that we faced with this is that, there were some strategies where we weren't sure if it was like building specific or campus specific. It also was kind of a project that has changed hands on both sides with T-Mobile and Gensler. So it was actually the first registered campus in FITWEL. But it is on the oldest version, which is version 2, which is built certification. So it's not a choice of design or built, it was just built certification. So getting those requirements during the pandemic was a challenge. They also have a very rigorous food and beverage standard, kind of probably similar to WELL. And also there were some modified policies that they had to kind of try to work with within their own current existing. So, but for being the first FITWEL registered campus, they paved the way to prioritize occupant health and well-being. The FITWEL project changed hands, as mentioned, with both parties, and is finally under review. So we're hoping to get this at least certified by the end of 2022. The other challenge was, since it was registered as version 2 and it was built certification, it was challenged to make some of these policies final. It was a challenge to get some of the photographs because it was hard to get on site during the pandemic and shutdown. But we've been able to work those through. It's happening. And there was also some turnover with the food and beverage consultants. However, we were able to get T-Mobile to commit to pursuing some of the food and beverage strategies, and now they're offering healthy food options and amenities for their occupants. And some key achievements and takeaways for this is that they have had the workplace program is in alignment with opportunities through upfront strategy engagements and addressing client goals and increasing capacity and eliminating underutilized spaces while equipping employees with opportunities to work in new and agile and innovative ways. Providing adaptability and choice improves in performance, as well as lighting and wayfinding to help enhance the overall campus experience. So, between the terraces, bridges, and public spaces to promote mobility and connectivity, together these components create a sense of community and pride of place. and promoting a culture of inclusivity and equity. And one of the things I have noted here, is like some of the opportunities we have is connectivity outdoor, public safety, and I put from spooky to magenta, and it was just something that we heard the client talk about before they did an extensive lighting plan on campus, that it used to be dark and spooky. And so, T-Mobile's color is magenta, so it's been really lit up, and there's a lot of magenta. But some of the health impact highlights show that there's about 90% of strategies support social equity, and 83% reduces morbidity and absenteeism. And then the next slide, just some key overall takeaways is that the Center for Active Design has been an amazing partner to work with through the certification process. So if you ever go through the process, whoever's managing the FITWEL will have that resource to like a coach, somebody they're connecting with to get some of these clarifications. They've helped us expand, project boundary interpretations, provided guidance on alternative compliance paths if it wasn't straightforward, if there was some gray. And they acknowledged innovation or innovative solutions that may not have quite been specified, but they've been flexible and open with that. And just to note that they're coming out with more resources available to help teams through the certification process. And again, just to echo that clients are making wellness a priority and addressing occupant safety and satisfaction by doing certifications like FITWEL. And just one important another key piece, just to keep client engaged through the process, because so much of the star rating they can achieve is on them as well. So yeah, and that's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Nova, for all of those case studies, and especially focusing on different scorecards. That's been really great. So yeah, in case if you have any questions, you can always post it in the chat box. We can go over that towards the end. So, but next we have Jyotsna presenting on some of the concepts and best practices related to FITWEL. So yeah, Jyotsna. Hello.
Thanks, Madhu and Noah. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I was on mute.
No worries.
So to delve a little deeper into the FITWEL concepts and best practices, next slide. The FITWEL is divided, as Madhu said, broadly into 12 sections that impact 7 health impact categories. And one of the strong focus areas is physical activity. Next slide. So as this graphic shows, it's the 4th leading risk factor for mortality. And the way FITWEL wants to address this aspect is by a variety of strategies that includes where the building is located, what the walk score is, how the landscape or the building interiors are designed. So I just wanted to give a random example. It's not really project specific. This is Chinatown from San Francisco. It has a walk score of 100, which basically means it has the highest walk score ever in the scale, which means that anyone working or living here do not have a need for a car to do basic errands. So basically what it means is the walk score is basically a score that is given based on the distance of local amenities that is within a reasonable walking distance, say a 5-minute walking distance. But I wanted to say that not all projects are, they are not always situated in a downtown area. They don't have the best walk score. In such scenarios, what do we do? So the next slide. This is where the designers come into play. Like for example, FITWEL also lays a huge stress on how the building entrance, the outdoor spaces, the building access, how all of those are designed to encourage walking and essentially physical activity. So the way it is done is promoting accessible and safe pedestrian routes, promote public transit and bicycle facilities if feasible for that project site location, have a landscape design that have a variety of different spaces like restorative or social spaces. Next slide. So this, I wanted to give an example of 1 West Santa Clara Street, which was designed by DES architects and engineers. It's a gut rehab of an existing building. This project on the location aspect is a very lucky project in the sense that it's in the downtown San Jose. So pretty much everything that FITWEL, many aspects that FITWEL addresses is within like literally a half a mile walking distance. We talk about restorative garden. There's a park right behind the project that had restorative elements. There's a farmer's market in the next block. There's a bank of tennis courts provided by the city within a half mile walking distance, and right next to it is a Guadalupe walking trail. But if you look at the next project, which is a Matilda Commons in Sunnyvale, which is a FITWEL 1-star certified project, again by DES architects and engineers. It is located in a part of Sunnyvale that is not close to so many amenities within a reasonable walking distance. It's a very, so the campus as such comprises of 2 buildings, building A and B, both of which were core and shell office buildings. And it has a large parking garage at the rear, behind the campus. Now, if you see this building, okay, the building entrance opens into a plaza, which is completely car free. In fact, all vehicular access is segregated to the ends of the campus, and it does not interfere with the normal pedestrian movement around the campus. That includes this parking structure that also houses the fitness center in the ground floor. So any pedestrian movement is not impacted by vehicular access. Now, if we also look at other aspects of that, there are, if you go to the next slide, you will see that there are seating spaces provided within 30 feet of the main building entrance. So why seating areas? Because it not only, of course, we are talking about physical activity, but it also encourages occupants to, it also enables occupants to get some healthy sunlight exposure. Moreover, if you go to the next slide, you will see that there are a variety of different layers of activity spaces that are shown over here. That ranges from social spaces to restorative spaces. The photograph in the next slide shows, the photograph in the next slide shows all those concrete bands, which are actually seating areas that are a little more private, that gives some level of privacy for those who seek it, while those areas that are highlighted in the circles on the opposite side, they are all seating areas that promote more social activities. Now, in addition to these really great landscape elements, there are other things that designers can consider if it is within their purview and within their project scope. One, in the next slide, we talk about publicly accessible use. We know, some of you would already be familiar with it, because parts of San Jose, their zoning regulations do require the ground floor to have publicly accessible uses. This was an image I stole from Google Street View from one of those downtown areas in San Jose. So essentially, when you have these publicly accessible uses like restaurants or retail that abut the sidewalks, you're not only encouraging physical activity, but you're also enhancing the quality of that neighborhood. Plus, if it's a developer-driven building, it also improves the value of that property. Now, we talked enough about, there are a few, we talked a lot about design, how designers can impact, but there are a few things. I just want to briefly touch about what the project owners can also do. Things like, if the project has enough access to public transport, then the project owners during operations can encourage their users, occupants, to avail public transport benefits. So those are things that can be written into their policies. So that was something that Noah had mentioned, how FITWEL also lays a lot of stress on policies, and these are ways in which the occupants can be encouraged. So I just wanted to give an example of Jacob's Philadelphia office, which is in the next slide, which is a FITWEL 2-star certified project. Because it's in downtown area of a very East Coast city, it meant that, as can be seen in this map, pretty much every public transport option is within a quarter-mile radius, which is not always feasible. But what because of this aspect, what Jacobs has done is, one, encourage bicycle use by giving bicycle parking areas within the building. That's if you go to the next slide. Plus also we also conduct periodic commuter survey to understand what the occupants prefer and tailor make any policies if applicable. Now, if you go to that's about outdoor spaces, but there are several things that designers can do indoors as well. So one of the primary things that we talk about here is stairs. The advantage with stairs is it comes at no additional cost. It may not really, definitely requires thought and planning for sure, but every building will require a staircase, and it just depends on how we want to design it and where we locate the staircase. And secondly, it does not require any special skills or gym membership to access the staircase. So next slide, I want to give a couple of examples. One is 3045 Park Boulevard, which is a FITWEL 1-star certified project by DES Architects. This is a 2-storied building, which meant that there was freedom to create an open staircase here, which is like literally 30 feet walking distance from the building entrance. The next slide, you will see that the staircase is also daylit. Moreover, the staircase in a direct line of sight from the building entrance as opposed to the elevator lobby, which is why the occupants are encouraged to use it. But on the other hand, if you look at the Jacobs Philadelphia office in the next slide, which is FITWEL 2-star certified, it is a multi-storied building. So open staircase comes in direct conflict with fire codes. Therefore, it has to be closed. And some of the strategies that we used here was having a door of a different color as compared to the other door. So if you look at the photographs in the next slide, this is like some of the simple measures that we are taken to basically attract attention towards the staircase, essentially beckoning people towards the stairwell. Plus, we also combine that with signages that are shown in the next slide. So the typical signs that are used in the project, just to the left-hand side, which was used in pretty much outside all the staircases. Another example I wanted to show you was from the UCLA garage. That's a project I did not work on, but thought this is a good example to show in case for whatever reason the building does not have staircases closer to the elevators. These are creative strategies that we can use to encourage occupants to use the staircase. Now, switching to workspace, in addition to encouraging physical activity, there are so many other aspects that go. So one of the surveys that was conducted in recent times showed that occupants gave a lot of weightage to daylight and access to views. So if you look at our Jacobs Philadelphia office, it's a very typical open office floor plan with a pretty deep floor plate, and yet we did achieve access to quality views in more than 90% of the spaces. One of the simple, this is very similar to the requirements in the LEED rating system. So one of the simple ways to achieve it is to limit the workstation partition heights to 42 inches as shown in the photographs in the next slide. So that shows that no matter where you sit in the office, like most occupants here should have, if they just turn their head, they should have access to views outside. Now, another aspect we talked about was daylight. So while, at the outset, FITWEL does not lay as much stress on daylight like WELL or even LEED. FITWEL kind of talks only about where the workstations are located with respect to the windows. It does not really require us to run simulations, but I still wanted to give this example because just to give the importance, talk about the importance of daylight. So while this workspace is supposed to be getting reasonable daylight for most of the spaces, the image to the left bottom shows that it can have glare issues closer to the perimeter. So one of the aspects that we can consider is like shown here in this interior layout is moving those workstations away from the perimeter. So most of the occupants are spared the problem of glare that might filter in through most of the day. I'm now switching to, next slide. Switching to shared spaces. So in addition to daylight and views, a lot of occupants give weightage to privacy. Yes, collaborative spaces are important, but private spaces are equally important, which is why FITWEL talks about spaces like quiet rooms and exercise rooms and mother's rooms. So in the Jacobs Philadelphia office, we have provided some of these, we have addressed some of these aspects, like we have a dedicated prayer room, which goes above and beyond what FITWEL needs. We have provided enough number of mothers' rooms in each floors, plus a variety of social, collaborative, as well as personal spaces around the project, as the project was also complying with WELL certification. A few examples in the next slide. So as mentioned earlier, some of those aspects also addresses policies and how we encourage employees to be healthy and active during operations. So here we have some workplace yoga that happens in the project to encourage all of that. So at the outset, the key takeaways over here are all projects will not be blessed with the best locations. That aspect will be, that is not within the control of the designers, but some of the things that the projects can do, even if they don't choose to go for the actual FITWEL or WELL certification or any other certifications, is to take the best practices and incorporate that in their design as a standard. For example, your staircase design, is it possible for that to be located, and how that can be designed to encourage occupants, how you can design the landscape elements. Those are some of the things that I would always encourage architects I work with to consider in their projects. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Okay. Thank you so much, Jyotsna, for the very detailed presentation on especially, nailing down all the design solutions that we can possibly consider, not just for FITWEL, but as a best practice. Thank you for your presentation. So we have about 10 minutes for Q&A, and I see some of questions here, but Veronica, do you have a list of questions? Or if someone wants to ask any questions, you can just unmute yourself and ask about any of the presentations that we had today, or we have some questions to go over from our end. But we would like to hear from you first, the audience. Anybody?
I see a question on mine. I don't know if it was a direct message, but it was from Carla. And the question is, how was it decided for each of these projects to do FITWEL certification and not WELL? And I think a lot of it boils down to cost. I think that FITWEL is definitely, just more affordable, but we also try to encourage, if the client or the applicant is most interested in building performance, then that's really when they should be pursuing WELL, because in that aspect, out of all those certifications, their performance verification is amazing and a great indicator to have for building performance from a well-being perspective. But a lot of cases, if they're doing LEED and all these other projects or other like initiatives, it sometimes does fall to pursuing FITWEL. And they do have a lot of the same intents. It's just not as robust from a mechanical, the MEP side.
Yes, thank you, Nova. And does that answer the question? I'm not sure. Yes, it's a challenge to actually decide on which certification to go for. But like Nova mentioned, depending on the intent of the client, we can always suggest them so-and-so certification. And we have a question from Letitia. What do you see as the main challenges to pursue the certification? What is a typical construction cost premium as well as soft costs? Would one of you like to answer this, Nova or Jyotsna?
I can probably go first. So as far as FITWEL goes, there it's not as my personal experience has been that it's not as challenging as a few other rating systems like WELL or even LEAD. The most of the focus area is on signages, some of course design that does not necessarily come at a cost premium if it is planned right from the beginning, and of course policies. So the construction cost, it kind of varies. It's a little difficult to say, but we did do cost comparison between WELL and FITWEL for a few of our projects. Those projects, I must say, was started construction already, so it is not been very fair to WELL rating system. But what we noticed was in order to get a FITWEL certification at that point, it was something like plus $10,000. That includes all those signages and design changes and few aspects like that. And as far as soft costs are concerned, I can just give a brief about the registration and certification fee. So FITWEL, the registration fee, if I remember right, is $500, and the certification fee is $7,000. That's valid for 3 years.
Yeah, it does depend on the size of the project, though. Yeah. So, hi, Letitia. Good to see you on here. But yeah, just also mentioning that it's definitely the fee for WELL is like by square footage, and you can put it in an online calculator to determine what that would be. And for FITWEL, I think it's both for FITWEL and probably WELL Core, where they require you to include the square footage of not just the, if it's the multi-tenant base building, it's going to include the parking, the building, and any open terraces that are there. But in terms of the cost, it is definitely, don't know the exact, but for soft costs, the certification and registration costs are generally less than both LEAD and WELL. And as Jacinta had mentioned earlier about, or Justin mentioned earlier, it's more about the design features, what could be the base building stairs. And in some cases, it may be interconnecting stairs. So yes, if you use a base building stairs, it'll be less, but if you have to incorporate interconnecting stairs, they would have to apply to all the tenant floors that they would have access to. So there could be some cost there. But a lot of it is like signage as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it also looks like the earlier you make a decision, it's always better. Yeah, so that when it comes to the cost aspects of things. And we have another question from Carla on existing buildings. So her question is, would FITWEL be the ideal one for existing buildings? Because considering the accessibility of the certification system and relatively it's much stringent when it comes to certification. So I think that's what she means. But what are your takes on that? Like for existing buildings in particular, do you think FITWEL is the right standard?
I would agree with that, because for WELL, there's a lot of mechanical building systems that need to be addressed early on. And we always recommend to bring on, just at least at concept, even if we're not working, but bring in your FITWEL team, bring in your WELL team, or whomever your certification team is, to get them involved in the beginning, to let you know, hey, this is what you're going to need in the building, versus later. So if it's already a completed project, you can kind of work with signage and maybe like making some not design like paint signage or whatever. You can make those changes within an existing space if there's any changes. But yes, definitely, I think that would be the most appropriate.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. And yeah, Afsha had a question about prerequisite. Yeah, Jyotsna has answered. We don't have any prerequisites in FITWEL. Like we have it in LEAD or WELL, we don't have a set number of requirements to be met, to be eligible for a rating. So FITWEL, you can amount to those 90 points or whatever for the 1 star by any means. You don't have to have anything particularly done like a prerequisite. So that's one of the difference between FITWEL and other certifications. We just have a minute, but any more questions from the audience, or we can probably go over some of the questions that we have. Maybe just one or two. We don't have a lot of time. But unless, I just wanted to make sure that there are no more questions from the audience. Yeah, so that case, so the question that you see on the screen, challenges for GC or client, and how can a designer architect be like a good facilitator in the process? Like, I know Jyotsna talked a lot about how we can bring in a lot of value by actually um, adding in a lot of design elements, but I'm talking about the process. How can architects and our designer can be a good facilitator to make sure that there is this bridge between all of the stakeholders, right? GC, client, um, and us. So, to make the process much more efficient.
I think, I'll probably go first over here. So I think in FITWEL, probably the best way to approach this, like any other system, is start incorporating these best practices early in the design, so that the number of challenges that any other stakeholder in the project, it gets minimized, as opposed to considering it after the construction has started on site. And then you are forcing the GC or client, not the client, okay, the GC to go back and reorder things. That's not the best case scenario, because per se, FITWEL, there are quite a lot of overlaps between this and CalGreen, the local code. So in many projects, with just a little push and some little thought in the beginning at the design stage, you should be able to address quite a few requirements.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds good. Nova, do you have any thoughts on that?
With the timeline and process, or with the relation or collaborating with the GC and the architect?
Yeah, like, so yeah, it could be a two-part question, but Jyotsna and I was asking more like a follow-up from the previous question about the role of an architect or a designer. How can we be a good facilitator, between this stakeholders, so that, we have this process? I think you focus more on the client involvement in your presentation. So yeah.
In this case, mostly the projects we do at Gensler, we generally have a FITWEL team in addition as part of the design team, but separate. So a lot of times in some cases, this project, it could be a third-party certifier and a different architect and the GC. But I think in terms of that, is just ensuring that everybody kind of understands they meet regularly, and just with some of the design items, it really sometimes doesn't need to have, everybody there, but it's good to have the GC and the architect involved in some of the discussion. So just making sure that everybody's kind of engaged.
Okay. Yes. Thank you so much. Yeah, and we are past one, but definitely have this one last question about timeline. So how does it affect the overall project timeline, and how can you best integrate it? Or does it actually, if planned in a right way, I'm sure it can be done within the timeline that we have. But based on your experiences, do you have any thoughts on that?
Sure, I can go. For project time, it also depends on which certification, right? So if you're going for design certification, it's different from lead in that you can take it all the way up because it's design only. There's no proof of final official drawings or of pictures of these spaces. It's just kind of the drafts that are due at this point. So we'd say after the IFC set is completed, maybe give it like a month or something, but we would then typically start to pull in all the documentation and upload it. So during the process, it could be in CA, they could get design certification during CA in a project. Okay. So from where lead, you have to go through design and then the construction, and then you get certification.
Okay. Jyotsna, do you have any thoughts on that?
No, I think I echo what Nova had said about that. So depending on whether it's design or build certification, as long as you have all the design elements nailed down, you should you should be able to go in for the certification at any time as long as you have all the drawings finalized.
Okay.
And for built certification, that is buildings that are already occupied and are up and running, again, as long as all the policies are revised and set, you should be able to go in for that.